You should spend less money on your next ad. Now, this was the point of view shared on stage at the Youth Marketing Strategy Summit in East London back in June, and I just had to get the person who gave this talk onto the pod. I chat with Simon Lucey. Simon's founder and managing director of Hype Collective. They're a student marketing agency who work with some big brands in the consumer space and the employer marketing space. In this episode, we chat about how working with students as content creators has meant their clients spend less but get great results. Let's get on with the chat. Hi Simon, how you doing?
Yeah, well, good, thanks. A little bit sweaty, but apart from that, we're all good.
Yeah, I've decided to be as close to the patio as possible today, and make sure I get a bit of the sunshine coming into the house. So where from the country you zooming in from?
I'm zooming in from London Bridge, so our office, which I don't know whether you release a visual version of this, but for those that can't see it, I look like I'm in some fancy theatre, but it is actually our cupboard. And there's a massive pile of cardboard boxes just outside, which I think is a perfect metaphor for running an agency. Actually,
Yeah. Yes.
But, watch out over there.
Actually, I had an episode with Harry Hugo, who's one of the founders of the Goat Agency.
I know, yeah.
Their vlog is just like awesome. It's had a revamp recently, but anyway, reason for mentioning it is that that he was talking to me in his flat, I think in his bedroom. He said, "Chris, I've literally got my mic like stacked on like 4 piles of toilet rolls, and I'm surrounded by delivery boxes and bags." So it's yeah, it's we do what we need to do. I've done a few episodes, recordings of trailers in in the cupboard or under the duvet for best sound, that's for sure. But anyway, let's crack on. Let's start off with just a bit of an introduction about yourself and Simon.
Yeah, so I'm Simon, founder of Hype Collective. We're a student marketing agency that's been going blimey 4.5 years now. I always think we're super scrappy and we're just starting up, but we've been going for a little while now, and we work with brands that are looking to target students primarily in the UK. About 60% of our work is with consumer brands, and then the rest with mainly graduate employers. And then we've actually just recently started working on our first university account, which is really exciting.
Oh, nice. That's good.
So slightly figuring out that world as well. And in terms of what we do, it's before COVID, it was entirely events. COVID happened. We were fairly stressed. We had a big brand ambassador network. And so off the back of that, we launched a nano influencer kind of proposition, working with student creators. And that's really ballooned. So we still have the events, we still run the events. It's actually come back quicker than we thought it would. The influencer stuff, it's got really interesting. And I always describe myself as the most, or at least Hype is hopefully the most cynical influencer agency you'll ever work with. We got into the influencer game not because we love it, but because we thought it was a really important opportunity. But we go into it with a fairly cynical, rigorous approach, I guess.
The business is because of COVID now, you've been able to basically expand your offering and probably the richness of every other element of the business because of it.
Yeah, it's a weird one. We sat down about a year before COVID and we're like, what's our diversification plan? And at that stage, it was to increase the number of graduate employers that we work with.
Okay.
And we thought we put together a lovely strategy for that. Then COVID hit and we actually ended up diversifying our product offering rather than, we still work with more employers. But, the business has gone from like 5 people to 15 now throughout the COVID pandemic. And that growth has come from, growth within graduate employers as well, but growth within the services that we offer.
So it's thanks for joining. And the reason we see each other on LinkedIn, we've had a few chats and stuff, and it's been it's good to keep in touch. And in particular, a couple of weeks ago, we were both at the Youth Marketing Strategy Summit in London in Brick Lane, Truman Brewery, and you did a session, didn't you? You did a presentation in the student marketing part of the summit. So that I thought, look, actually, it's a really interesting topic you cover off on that. So let's kind of pick on that and just tell us a bit about what you were talking about, and then and we see where we go from there.
Cool. So, I mean, the title of the session was provocatively why brands should spend less money on their content. Love clickbait to try and get people to come along to your talks.
It's true though, isn't it? No, there was substance to it.
But so we've basically been doing a lot of work. We describe ourselves as having 3 offerings. So the events, which are parked separately, the influencer, and then also content production. And we always thought content production and influencer were kind of distinct, separate entities, basically. And the original kind of project which informed me on, like, kind of gave me this hypothesis, was working on a project with Adobe, which was a consumer campaign. And the long and short of it is we invested a huge amount of money, time, effort, and resources, and the client's resources in making this beautiful set of videos for paid ads. A small amount of budget left over at the end, and I'm talking like absolutely nothing. And I was like, why don't we just get an influencer to make a version of the video themselves? So we've got this influencer we worked with for ages. I gave her a call on the Tuesday. I'd say it took me about an hour. It took her an hour. It took the client about half an hour to approve. And we put it into exactly the same paid social campaign as this beautiful glitzy production campaign. And in a, I guess, really disappointing news, Emma's campaign completely outperformed everything that we'd spent, hours and hours with, the best freelance creatives that we could find, the best producers, the best editors, the best equipment. Emma's, even if you ignore the production cost deficit, just on pound for pound on paid Facebook ads, outperformed it. And we were like, blimey, have we been
brutal?
Have we been barking up the wrong tree?
Yeah.
And so that basically informed it. We were like, maybe we should be looking at content that fits within, the content around it. If you're like, I think the culture of Instagram has changed. Like, I think TikTok has influenced it. So even if you're sitting on Instagram, you're way more used to seeing stuff that, 3 years ago, your content on Instagram was beautifully created pictures. It was your amazing travel sunsets, your amazing lunch or whatever. And it had a homegrown but high quality production element to it. I think now the culture of TikTok has bled across where it's a lot more, rough and ready. And so our thought was, should we be producing ads that, even if they're not for TikTok, look more like TikToks? And in order to do that, you don't actually need a massive production team. You need people that are good at making TikToks, which are largely students. So that was the crux of it, is that we think there's huge opportunities in creating, that, I guess, cheaper sounds like a horrible word, but that slightly more affordable content that's a bit more rough and ready. And what we're finding is that it's actually performing better in lots of different situations. Not all situations. Obviously, there's a role for that big headline video, and we don't think that we should go sack all the agencies quite yet. But in certain situations, that more user-generated style works, basically.
That's really interesting. In particular, I think the bit when you're saying it, like how quickly it was to get the content produced and how quickly it was to sign off. I think that kind of thing is as important, if not more important, than the budget these days. Why was it so more straightforward?
So we firstly, the amount of people involved. So you need for this an account manager who knows the client inside out, a creative who can help shape the brief, and the student involvement. So they're the 3 kind of people that you need involved in the process. That creative person there is there to mentor the student through and make sure that the content's good enough quality. But so, on the Adobe project, there would have been, minimum 10, 15 people working on it. There's also, when you're investing all that money in a shoot day, you need to bloody make sure that your creative treatment and your description up front is perfect, because if then you've got to go and reshoot it. If I need Emma to do another video back home, like, you can have a stab at it, and if you don't like it, we can do you another one, because it takes half an hour to make a TikTok. So I think the really exciting thing for us was that you could batch create quite a lot of content, and see which works. And if we make 10 videos, the client might hate 2 of them. They might be very surprised by 2 of them, but actually like them. And then 5 of them might just be kind of fine in what they had in mind. And I think that allows you to be way quicker, react to, like, you know, the world is changing in every 10 minutes. It allows you to react to those and create content on the fly, basically.
And actually, that creating content on the fly is, because I think that encourages more creative freedom as well, doesn't it? Because you would not under that pressure. Not to say that everyone is in as high production, you know, video projects are under pressure, not, but it's because you can just decide, let's give it a go and just try something else if it doesn't work. You know, you've kind of got, well, you've got far less to lose, haven't you? But by doing that, that freedom kind of, relieves everybody and allows you to do things you probably couldn't have done if you'd done it the other way.
100%. If you're making one video that's costing you £50,000, you're not going to take a risk, are you? You're going to go for the safe option. Whereas if you're making 10 videos that are costing you, you know, a couple of grand, then you're like, well, if it's not right, it doesn't work. And one of our clients, Student Universe, said something funny to me the other day. It was like, all the stuff that we're creating with you, Simon, is either for TikTok organic or it's for paid social. Regardless, if it doesn't work, no one will see it because the Facebook ads won't point towards it, and the TikTok algorithm won't favor it if it doesn't work. So it's like, like weirdly, with your content, I'm the most pro risk out of anything that we do, because he was like, if it's not working, no one will see it.
That's brilliant.
Yeah,
and I think she, you know, spoke to, you know, a lot of people who listen to this, whether they're agency side or client side, and they talk about the best relationships is where there is that feeling of freedom to do things and to try things out. It's it makes such a difference. You said earlier on, you know, when you were talking, it just obviously the word native comes into mind. Yeah. So I found that often, like, native is kind of packaged as being this, well, it's native advertising, so it sits in amongst the content. It's just an ad. it's just an ad. It just happens to sit in between everything else. But what native content really is content that knows where it's sitting. it's familiar with the surroundings, and it doesn't jar from it at all. And I think actually I've probably taken some of your words from the stuff you were talking about, you know, at the Youth Marketing Strategy Summit. But I think that thing about native content and understanding really what native content is really important. In a way, the brand guidelines from a brand are important, but actually you could certainly argue that I've done it before myself working with a university, was saying actually the brand guidelines of Snapchat are even more important than your own brand guidelines. Try and find some sort of, you know, crossover, you know, but what takes precedence is what the platform needs. And I suppose that kind of links on to you giving the creators that freedom to do what they think is best.
Yeah, and you're so right. Like, I'd not thought of that term native. Actually, I'm always like a little bit cynical about like these industries. It's a good way to sell by describing
absolutely.
But the thing that surprised me most was we were working on a thing with Deliveroo, recruiting riders to go out and ride for them. You know, not most in the world. And we work with creators, and Deliveroo, all of our clients, I'd say, have I don't know how many saying this, relatively strict guidelines in terms of what we can say, how we stick to their brand guidelines. It impressed me how the students, you know, we worked with the students with the brand guidelines to come up with ways of compellingly telling the story. And it was, you know, their ideas were so good given that the limitations on their creativity were relatively high from that client. And I think it's just, I always thought it's important to work with people that understand the channel from a kind of how you format the content and how the content looks. But I think actually creatively it's really important to, you know, in terms of how you tell a story and how you tell a story that hits. I think, you know, I didn't expect them to chip in as much on that aspect as well.
Well, it's like, it's you know, a classic example of kind of the reverse of that is where, you know, brands are creating their showpiece video. That could be, you know, something that ends up on TV, or it could be something that's part of a recruitment campaign, but they have the kind of the big heavy hitter video, which has got the high production and everything, you know, and it's well, then what they do is they then cut it, and they cut it with the platforms in mind last.
Yeah.
So then it doesn't feel quite normal. But you know, these days, I mean, I've even done it myself, where you know, being somewhere at a recording for a podcast or a video shoot, and you just get that side hustle content, that side content while you're there. But that's with the platforms, you know, the platforms in mind. So yeah, it's I wonder why that is the case. But I think maybe it's sometimes the creativity is the first thing that's considered. But without that kind of true platform understanding, that's where your creators, your influencers come in. You know, when there isn't that understanding, you do get things that do certainly jar with the platforms that they've been created for.
I think often we're confusing creativity with high production content. Like,
it's true.
and it's stuff that looks beautiful, and using the best equipment and all that sort of stuff. But you know, I think like it's cliche and everyone uses the example, but if you look at, you know, Duolingo or Ryanair on TikTok, like that is unbelievably creative.
Ryanair, brilliant, yeah.
But it's like, and you know, should, you know, your big bank go and launch a Ryanair style TikTok for their graduate recruitment? Not. Probably not. But I think the lesson is, you know, they've essentially got, you know, the model isn't actually that dissimilar. They've got you know, a relatively recent graduate who really understands the platform to come in and just have fun with it. I think, like, you know, what we're talking about here is using your current students and just mentoring and coaching them through the process, so that they're creating content that's probably, you know, with an employer, there's going to be slightly bigger constraints basically on what you can do.
You're giving them the context, the all important context, so they can then do things in their own way, but is in a way that's relevant to obviously the brand. And it's like, it's really what you say about, you know, what creativity is like, it's absolutely spot on, because you know, it's these days we've got studios in our pockets, haven't we?
Yeah.
You know, and you can just, you know, get out, open up the app, and just multiple apps, TikTok for example, and just create content. And yeah, it's not necessarily the creativity, as it isn't necessarily just for the privilege of creative teams. You know?
Yeah. No, definitely.
Go on. You crack on. You're going to say something.
Well, I was going to say that back to kind of to what we were saying before. It also, so we all think that all of our agencies are super diverse, forward-thinking, progressive places. The creative director is always an old white dude with a beard, and that is, like, I've never come across one that isn't. And I think what you're doing here is giving that creativity to people that genuinely reflect your audience. So like my bias, like I'm, you know, I've got a bit of a beard, but my bias is with like some of that Deliveroo content. Everything that I thought would resonate didn't resonate. And previously, if it had been a single video, I would have had like a big hand in what video we create, right?
Yeah.
You would carry some clout. But because we were creating 15 videos for the price of one, we were able to experiment with a few other videos, see what happens. And I think actually from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, your like agencies aren't diverse places. They're not under the same level of scrutiny that you know, big employers are. And I think this is a way to create content that will resonate with a broader range of audiences than if your standard creative director is having that light bulb moment.
Absolutely. I think it's like, if you think about typical research phases you go through to come up with that proposition that then will, you know, be on the money when it comes to, you know, creating that content and producing that content. It's, you know, why not just use this model of content creation to be your focus group, to be your research, you know, kick it out of theory. You know, okay, there is valid ways of doing it, like, running quantitative analysis and running focus groups, and that does give you value, but there's no replicating just getting it out, kicking it out of the sandbox, whatever you want to say, and just seeing how it sits.
Yeah.
Again, that's quite liberating as well, because then you're confident that your next ideas are going to be on point.
Yeah, and then you've got the beauty of it is you've produced 15 videos, you put it into a paid social platform, you've then got all this incredible data that will tell me so much better than I thought that actually people are relating to the aspirational content or the practical content or whatever. So, like we're working with a client at the moment, and like the weird thing is that every single video that we've done with a fake green screen has outperformed absolutely everything. And like I could rank all the content on any other metric, but the thing that performs best is when they're speaking in front of a green screen. Like, I don't know why that is, but it's the one that's performing best. So,
oh wow,
yeah.
over time, we'll probably get the answer to that.
Yeah. Apart from probably the trend will have changed and the green screen won't be working at that stage. But
yeah. So earlier on, you mentioned about the relationship between that team of three. You got your client, the client person, the creative person, and then the creator itself. So how do you make sure that works well? What are kind of the key ingredients of that kind of select successful relationship?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It's super important, and it's something that we've been like trying to figure out. I think so. From our end, obviously we've got the accounts person, the account manager, account director. They kind of buy into what we do as co-creation as a project, so we're not too worried about them. You then got the creative person that may be an internal person, maybe freelance. I think the really important thing with them is they are going to have to be more patient than they would be on a normal project dealing with students, and that they buy into the coaching, supportive, mentoring aspect of the role. And then for the student, I think like pretty much all the students we work with are incredibly excited by the opportunity of getting some experience working with a big brand. This is the sort of job which they can put on their CV, they can talk about in an interview. When's that time that you made content for the civil service or whoever? But they need to feel really involved in the campaign, and it's very easy to then get to like the bit where it's about to go live and just cut them out. They never actually see the results, and then they feel a bit sort of like they were just used for their element, basically. So we always we've got a small office. Well, we've got a small team. We've got 15 people in head office, but there's always students in and out of here that are working on projects, and they get to feel like part of the team. And I think it's really important that we treat them with respect, because also they'll go on to become your best advocates. You can obviously measure that Facebook ad or Instagram ad or whatever, but once they've had a day filming with you, they'll go off and tell their mates, and that's the thing that you can't really measure or control, but it's certainly valuable.
And they're your current customers that you can retain, or they're your future customers because of what you just said about spreading the good word. In particular, in the employer space, you're actually doing the do in terms of what you're saying about what you do for people in terms of helping them, in their career, actually through your actual actions, not just words, but actions of going, let's work together. I understand your expertise and your knowledge of the market we're working in. We'll share what we know, but we'll just let you then go with it. And that kind of feeling of autonomy and mastery. Oh God, I'm going down the Dan Pink Drive book at the moment, but it's that kind of stuff. That is really empowering. But it's true. It's empowering for the individuals involved, isn't it? And you learn stuff as an agency and as a client by working with those people. Everyone wins.
I never know. I'm always interested. I'll do a survey of all your listeners. How much hype should talk about the moral aspect of what we do? Like I was doing the maths. We paid over 5,000 students over the last 4.5 years something. So 5,000 students have done something for us, whether it's hand out some flyers on a rainy day in Leeds or create a video for Adobe. Like they're the two ends of the extreme. So it's awesome, but obviously we do it because it makes better ads or it generates results for our clients. I 100% agree. There's obviously the selfish reason for doing this, but ultimately it's a really hard time to be a young person to get experience. So this is a really nice way of boosting that and making it a bit easier.
Absolutely. And I think it is also that thing about, not using those influencers, content creators not use them as just influencers, those vessels to carry your message. That's just, that message has been around for a long time, but you could say it's not being adhered by enough brands anyway, but use them as partners and then, fantastic. Rather than just, as you said earlier on about, if you don't involve them throughout the whole process, they kind of feel a bit used.
Yeah, they're not media channels. They're not like
exactly.
They're real people, people that like are good at creating content. So make the most of it.
Good stuff. So what's you think about some work you guys have done, whether in the consumer or the employer space? What's the work that puts the biggest smile on your face?
Oh, good question. So I guess on the employer space, I was saying I think the employers that are being the most forward thinking when it comes to working with influencers are probably charities and kind of public sector. So like the likes of civil service, frontline, unlocked, people like that. I genuinely think it's probably because they're on slightly tighter budgets, so they need to be a bit thrifty in how they set about doing it. So we launched a thing this year called the Frontline 50, which was really cute, which was obviously Frontline's purpose is all about enabling social change. So we found 50 students that were all contributing to social change in a very different way on their university campus and recognise them.
Nice.
So they weren't necessarily paid influencers. This was the thing they all applied for. But then there was a vote for who got in the top 10 and got like rewards and stuff like that. So some of the significant audiences and shared Frontline in, activisty circles or mental health circles. And I think those are the sorts of circles where you're likely to find Frontline applicants. So that was great. Outside, like kind of not on the influencer model, my favorite one outside of the recruiters, we're working with Co-op, who have a partnership with Neighbourhood Watch, is probably the least student-friendly brand in the world. I always think of Neighbourhood Watch as your curtain twitcher, old person. Not bad. Neighbourhood Watch have been so good to work with. Like they have a partnership with Co-op, and we've been doing this stuff around student safety. And at the start, I was a bit anxious. I was like, God, we're just an agency saying what student safety should be. So we set up a council of students who have informed the entire project and launched this student watch. And the students said to us they wanted to do something about safety on a night out because they think that that's not talked about enough. And we've launched a training program which 50 presidents or social sector societies have been through, where they get training on what to look for around spiking, sexual assault and violence on a night out. And again, that's, it's not an influencer campaign, but there's been a huge amount of influence created and a lot of social chatter created with that. So
well, it's brands actually partnering with the people they want to engage with, not treating them as media channels, treating them as people who know themselves and know the space they're in, they live in, and using that, you get some great creativity that comes from that as well. Send me over the links to those two. I'll pop them in the episode description. Great. So I'm keen to, as well as the chat, is to kind of pull out some actual examples, and it doesn't have to be purely in the employee space for people to take inspiration from that. So I'll make sure that goes in the episode description. But thanks very much. Really appreciate it. It's been a good chat. We could probably talk for a lot longer, but I know you're busy, so might get you back on for another episode in the future.
Brilliant. All right, thanks so much. That's been great.
Good stuff. Cheers, Simon. Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the chat. If you did, feel free to subscribe to get future episodes, and please do share the podcast with others. It really does make a difference.